Shawty do it like this, do it like that. Do it like this, shawty do it like that. Come on, do it like this, do it like that. Do it like this, shawty do it like that. Come on.
The exercises in this strong and stable Swiss ball weight training program range from beginner to extremely advanced. Progress very slowly, doing only the exercises that you're very comfortable with. I highly recommend that you master the exercises in my Swiss ball training for athletes videos before you begin this program, as they serve as a good foundation to give you the skill that you need on a Swiss ball before adding free weights to your program. Before beginning the strong and stable exercise program, always clear the floor, checking carefully for sharp objects or anything that could pierce the ball. Stay clear of machines and furniture. You can fall off the ball and hurt yourself by hitting a machine or a piece of furniture, and you may conk yourself in the head. Always use a spotter. When you're doing these exercises, it's imperative that you have a spotter to help you stay on the ball and to help you maintain good technique. The exercises in the strong and stable Swiss ball weight training programs serve as an indicator of what is possible. They are by no means a prescription, so only do what you're able to do safely and carefully. The last thing you want is to have a ball explode on you while you've got a dumbbell in your hand or you're laying on your back. No accidents, safe training. The Swiss ball is an effective method for improving bicep strength and core strength. The exercise can be done with bilateral arm action, always keeping a good upright posture, head and eyes level with the horizon, or you can switch to a single arm action. Or you can alternate arms. Now, if you really want to challenge the stabilizers of the body, simply drop one of the dumbbells. Now, performing this exercise with one dumbbell puts a lateral load through the body, which requires that your postural muscles work really hard to hold you upright. Now, when you've become proficient with this exercise with both feet on the ground, you may try doing the exercise with one foot off the ground, which is much more challenging, as you see Jesse able to do here. Once again, all the different options can be used whether you got 1 foot on the ground or 2 feet on the ground. Just remember, when you pick 1 foot up, it's a very challenging exercise. Once you've mastered the exercise in a seated position, try the kneeling position. But as I've said earlier, make sure that you've mastered kneeling on the ball without weights before you attempt this exercise with weights. Let's have a look at some of the Swiss ball cable column options for strengthening not only the biceps, but the core musculature. Using the cable column system, you can do a high pulley technique for the biceps curls. If you include wrist flexion, you're strengthening the wrist flexors and the elbow flexors. Or you can use a technique I learned from Charles Poliquin, which is to leave the wrist dorsiflexed, which more effectively isolates the biceps musculature. The Swiss ball can be effectively used as a preacher for the biceps curl exercise. Now, as you fatigue on the Swiss ball, you can roll backwards, changing the point of maximal loading in the muscle. As the muscle fatigues, you just want to roll back a little further each time until the point at which you're exhausted. Now, what you can see if you watch carefully is that maximum load on Terry's biceps is right here when the forearm is parallel to the surface of the earth. So as he rolls forward on the ball,
you see his arm bends, so the point of maximal loading changes in the muscle. Now, an advanced method for doing the exercise is to simply hold the dumbbell in one place and roll back, and then roll forward. You can combine the easy curl bar and a Swiss ball for a deathly biceps workout. The ball can be used as a traditional preacher, or you can use the advanced loading concepts from Jerry Telley's book Beyond 2001, A Scientific Approach to Bodybuilding, and you can change the loading point throughout the range of motion. What you will see here is that as Paul fatigues, he will roll back slightly on the ball, changing the point of maximal loading. By the time he is completely upright, his biceps will be exhausted. Now, to prolong the set, he will hold the bar up eccentrically or isometrically, eccentrically, rolling forward, now slowly lowering the weight to the point of maximum resistance, and then coming back up on top of the ball into a more favorable position, curling, because remember, we're at the end of the set now, rolling forward, lowering, coming back, and loading through a more favorable loading point, rolling forward, and lowering eccentrically, and relax. This is a lot harder than it looks. This is a very tough technique. You won't be able to use a lot of weight, and remember, you're on an unstable ball, so it's a lot harder than it may look on video. Give it a try. You'll need an 85 centimeter Sissel ABS ball. There are a number of effective methods for performing triceps exercises on the Swiss ball. The first method I'd like to show you is a simple seated French press. Make sure you've got a good stable position on the ball. Put the weight up over your head, maintaining a fixed position of your humerus or your upper arm. Now, if you get real good at this exercise and you want to challenge the core, you can attempt to lift one leg up off the ground, as you see Terry doing here. Now, there's some other effective exercises that you can do for the triceps musculature on the Swiss ball. So let's take a look at Jesse, and I'll show you how to do the triceps multi-grip extension exercise. Laying flat on the Swiss ball, as you see Jesse doing, keep the humerus fixed at the shoulder. Start with a reverse grip. This is your weakest grip. You'll fatigue here the quickest. Drop the weight straight back by your head. Now, as you fatigue, you can go ahead and change from the reverse grip to a hammer grip to prolong the set. Always making sure to keep that upper arm fixed so you isolate the exercise to the triceps musculature. Once the hammer grip or the neutral grip fatigues, you can go to a prone grip, which will be the strongest grip. Be very careful not to bang yourself in the head with a dumbbell. Now, what you can do to change the point of loading in the musculature is use techniques that I've learned from Jerry Telle. Change the position of the body relative to the working extremity. So for instance, Jesse can drop his pelvis down toward the ground, and now he's making the fixed point or the origin and the insertion of the long head of the triceps be further away from each other, which will then change the exercise. And once again, you can work multiple grips in any one of these body positions. Using a good anchor, you can also do the decline position, but as I've mentioned earlier, you must have double the weight on your feet as an anchor that you do in your hands. The triceps kickback can also be done from the prone position on the Sissel ABS ball. The Swiss ball is a great way to condition the wrist flexors and wrist extensors. I like my clients to start over the ball. As they flex the wrist, maximum loading is at a point when the wrist is fully flexed. As they begin to fatigue, I have them slowly roll back on the ball, which changes the point in the length-force relationship that the muscle is maximally loaded, which allows you to prolong the set. You can blast your wrist extensors in the same fashion. Over the ball, as you fatigue, progressively roll up on top of the ball as you see Terry doing here. These load shifting techniques are just a small sample of what you'll learn in Jerry Telle's upcoming video on hypertrophy training. Let's take a look at some of my favorite Swiss ball rotator cuff exercises. First, I'd like to show you the weighted prone cobra. As you can see Penny performing the exercise here, she's prone over the ball, performing a movement that is a combination of horizontal shoulder abduction and simultaneous external rotation, which activates not only external rotators of the shoulder, but the scapular adductor muscles, or the muscles that squeeze your shoulder blades together. Be very careful not to try to do this exercise with too heavy a weight, otherwise it will screw up the normal recruitment patterns in the rotator cuff and shoulder girdle. Once again, watch carefully. It's a combination of external rotation and horizontal abduction. Let's watch how Penny performs the prone cobra exercise off the Swiss ball in a kneeling position. And rest. Now, a unique feature of my new triple cross system is that the top 4 plates are made of aluminum, which allows injured and uninjured patients to effectively perform rotator cuff exercises. As many of you know, the top plate on most of these machines is too heavy to effectively do rotator cuff exercises. Let's look at another one of my favorite rotator cuff exercises on the Swiss ball. Using the Swiss ball, you can also perform traditional medial rotator cuff exercises. Or, using my double column system, you can do more progressive P&F pattern type exercises off the Swiss ball. First, we'll work in a quasi-isolated pattern, and then Penny will progress into an integrated weight shift pattern. Terry will now demonstrate a series of exercises for stabilization in the core and shoulder musculature using the body blade. This is a very effective tool that utilizes what is called rhythmic stabilization. Let's have a look at how it can be performed in the seated position. The supine Russian twist can be effectively performed with a dumbbell or with cables. First, let's look at how Penny performs the exercise with dumbbell resistance. Now, to change the effect of the exercise, to completely change the feel of the exercise, we'll switch to cable resistance. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first show you a high cable, which will load the body at a completely different position as a medium point or a low cable. What I'd like you to remember is that when there's a 90-degree angle between the cable and the working extremity, that is the point of maximum loading. So as the cable height changes, the point of maximum load changes, allowing you to strengthen and condition the abdominal wall or the whole torso far more fully than you could with one given exercise at one given loading point. Let's have a look. A phenomenal abdominal exercise is the wood chop. To perform the wood chop from the seated position on the ball, simply reach across with the hand from the side you're going to pull towards. It goes on the cable first. The other hand goes on top of that hand. First, we're going to start with a fixed pelvis, and we're going to think of recruiting from the oblique abdominal musculature on the side we're rotating towards. So put your mind right here and rotate. That will work this internal oblique and the opposite external oblique when he goes this way, and it will be the opposite when he goes the other way. Now, to progress the exercise on the ball, we will incorporate a weight shift, which is much like swinging a hockey stick, a baseball bat, or a golf club. This exercise would then be progressed into the standing position. Now, an advanced core conditioning modification to the wood chop is to perform the exercise from a kneeling position. Let's have a look and see how long Penny lasts. Let's take a look at one of my favorite chopping exercises, the horizontal chop. Bringing the line of pull down to horizontal makes it a much tougher exercise because now the load is trying to pull you right off the ball. First, we'll try the exercise with 2 feet on the ground and a fixed pelvis. Now we'll progress into a weight shift. And the next level of the exercise is to attempt to do the exercise with one leg off the ground. This significantly increases the recruitment of the core musculature. If you're really frisky, you can try doing it with no feet on the ground. Do a few sets like that, and every muscle in your body will get tired. The horizontal chop can also be performed with a dumbbell. Once you've warmed up, you can effectively increase the load on the exercise by picking up the pace. When you change from a concentric to an eccentric motion, there's quite a load through the torso. And relax. You can also try to do this exercise with one leg. Once again, go very slowly, don't overdo it. As the weight moves, it changes the position of the center of gravity in your body, which requires that your brain constantly adapt your body position on the ball. For athletes and workers, performing these types of exercises build what I call nervous system reserve. If you get good at doing these exercises, going out and playing soccer or lifting packages in a warehouse is easy for your nervous system. But if you use the traditional approach to weightlifting, training on machines, you don't have any nervous system reserve, and picking up a package in a three-dimensionally unstable environment is actually a challenge for your nervous system. Now, using my 2-point column system here, I can give him a load in 2 different places at one time. So he reaches maximal load on the first cable and then moves out of it and reaches maximal load on the second cable, causing a much more complete strengthening effect on the torso musculature. If that's not enough for you, then progress yourself up slowly to the kneeling horizontal chop. Once you've mastered the Swiss ball side flexion as demonstrated in my Swiss ball for athletes videos, you can go ahead and add some weight by holding a weight plate to your chest. Start out small and progressively get bigger in slow increments, because whenever you're strengthening stabilizers with a direct hit like this, you want to take it easy because they can get very sore and you don't want to destabilize by killing off your stabilizers, so take it one step at a time. Penny will show you how the exercise is done. Now, it's also important to note that Penny is anchoring her back foot on this weight stack here. Once you start putting weight on your upper body, you definitely need to anchor yourself. You can effectively anchor most times by just putting your feet at the corner of a wall where the wall and the floor meet, and that usually works quite well. Now, don't forget to do the other side or you're going to look like you've been carrying around a 60-pound briefcase for the last 2 years. Next, I'm going to show you an exercise that will definitely separate the men from the boys. I'll never forget when I submitted my hitting above the belt and hitting below the belt articles to Muscle and Fitness magazine. The editor called me up and said, "What are these Swiss balls anyhow?" They proceeded to try to convince me that they didn't want them in the article because the weightlifters that read their magazine would think that it was wimpy to train on a Swiss ball. Well, I told their editor, "You find the strongest weightlifter you know and bring him on down to my office, and we'll see just how strong he is and just how wimpy these balls are." Now, these are not wimpy exercises, and if you're really after strong, functional core musculature, this is one of your essential exercises. Exercising off the floor is dead. This is the best way to train the abdominal musculature, gives you the greatest range of motion, and by far the greatest strength development. As you can see, this is a 160-pound dumbbell. This is no easy job. It takes quite a while to build up to this. So if you use the same principles that I'm demonstrating here and start off with a very small dumbbell, work in the 8 to 12 loading repetition zone, and progress your way up, you'll get stronger. Don't forget to follow the principles of good weightlifting, undulating your loads, intermittently taking rest periods, and not overdoing the exercise. So, to perform the exercise, here's what you've got to do. Position yourself on the ball so that your head can drop back and comfortably touch the ball, yet when the ball is in the middle of your spine, if you feel compression in your low back, it's usually an indicator that the ball needs to go more toward the head. If the ball is too far toward the head, you don't get much of a workout. You want to find a nice balance point between the point at which your head can rest on the ball and you're not getting compression in the spine. Terry is in a good position here. Now, Terry is already warmed up. You must make sure you really warm up well because you do not want to tear an abdominal muscle. You'll get a big surprise when you see how much involvement your abdominal wall has in almost anything you do. Now, to accept the weight, you drop down as you see Terry here, taking careful note that he has very large anchor weights on his feet. The anchor weights must at least weigh as much as the weight you're lifting, okay? So if you got a 160-pound dumbbell, you need 160 pounds of anchor weight. Now Terry is going to take this weight and roll it up onto his body. I recommend, if you're new at doing the exercise, no matter what weight you are, that you put a small towel across your chest because the weight of the dumbbell digs into the chest. For females with bigger breasts, this can be quite painful, so you may want to try doing the exercise without heavy weight or slowly work up to it. Terry is now going to roll the weight up his body on top of his chest. It's good to have a spotter behind you because the ball can shoot out. He's trained and experienced and knows how to do it, but when you lean forward to get that weight, never round your back or the ball will shoot out. Keep the tongue on the roof of the mouth and the chin tucked. Draw the belly button toward the spine and initiate the crunch and curl all the way up. Only doing the crunch motion, never try to sit up. And up you go. As he comes back, the dumbbell rolls right up to his clavicles, and as he comes up, he just lets the dumbbell naturally go where it fits most comfortably. Now, as you fatigue, you want to curl it up, and on your last rep, just roll back down into the position that you accepted the weight, roll it down your body, and pick your hips up and roll it off onto the bench. I recommend when you're using heavy weights like this that you take an adequate rest period, because the last thing you want to do is try to pick that weight up again on top of an unstable ball when you're fatigued, because you're very likely to have an accident. You do not want to have an accident with a heavy dumbbell like that. Progress yourself very slowly and very carefully. There's no reward for being a hero, but becoming injured. Now, many people get stuck with traditional abdominal exercises, only doing strict strength training type exercises, not varying the speed of motion, not varying the exercise, not varying any of the acute exercise variables at all. What I'd like to show you now is a sit-up chop type movement pattern, which is great for athletes, because this exercise allows more effective integration of the hip flexors, trunk flexors, and neck flexors than just the crunch exercise, and it's done at speeds that are more appropriate to sports conditioning. So your positioning and your anchoring is just the same as the heavy crunch as we just demonstrated. You're going to take a smaller dumbbell that you can move explosively. You should be able to complete the motion in less than 3/4 of 1 second. If you cannot complete it in less than 3/4 of 1 second, the weight is too heavy. You should never do this exercise for more than 8 to 12 seconds per set. It's an explosive exercise designed to integrate and develop explosive strengthening and conditioning for sports situations. So what you're going to see here, Terry will do it slowly. He's going to drop the weight over his head, and then he's going to explosively move the weight coming up into almost a full seated position, dropping back down over the ball, stretching the abdominal wall and the lats, and then coming on up again. Now, key features here is that when he's in this position down here, the tongue is always held on the roof of the mouth behind the front teeth to activate the neck stabilizers. He initiates the movement by drawing his belly button towards his spine, a slight contraction to activate the deep abdominal wall musculature. This is essential. You must always train that deep abdominal wall. It doesn't matter what you can do on the table in a physical therapist's office. If you can't activate the deep abdominal wall in a squat rack or in a heavy lifting situation at home or at work, you will be back injured. So always practice activating the deep abdominal wall prior to initiating any of your sports or work or weight training type movements. Okay? So Terry will start off at a slow pace, and then he'll speed up into a real-time pace for a few reps, demonstrating how the exercise should be done. And once again, it's essential that you warm up properly, or you can get hurt doing this exercise. Let's have a watch at how Terry progressively speeds up the exercise. Rest. Now, it's very important to never let go of the dumbbell for obvious reasons. Also, as you come up into a flex position, if you go too far, the ball will part company with you. So always have a spotter back here holding the ball so it does not escape. I have Terry doing the exercise without his shirt so you can see the activation of the abdominal muscles. You should not do these things on the Swiss ball without a shirt when you're using weights, because you can slide on top of the ball. So I highly recommend that you always wear a shirt. It's also a very good idea when doing any of these weight exercises in a supine position or any of the exercises where you're laying on the ball to have a towel handy, because putting a towel on top of the ball soaks up the sweat and acts as a good friction barrier between you and the ball. An excellent flexion rotation exercise is the cross crunch over the Swiss ball with dumbbell resistance. As you can see, Terry has the dumbbell off midline, which loads him into extension and rotation to the opposite direction that you're going to crunch to. So now what I want you to watch is how he performs the cross crunch exercise over the ball. Now, the cross crunch exercise can be progressed into the flexion pattern or the chop pattern by taking a lighter dumbbell and going to a higher speed. So now you're not just doing the chop, you're doing a chop with a cross angle with a dumbbell. So you have dumbbell resistance, which is very, very effective because it has a high level of carryover to work and sports type situations. So we'll take the weight from Terry. He'll take the smaller dumbbell. Now what you're going to see Terry do is a cross chop pattern, dropping off extension, coming up into flexion rotation. Once again, keep an eye on the ball. And switch directions. It's a good idea to stay clear of that weight, unless you got a hard hat on. And it's still a good idea. And rest. Now, these exercises are intended to be explosive exercises, although if you're working in some sports like wrestling where you have to go for 5 minutes at a time, there may be some application for sets of greater than 10 to 12 repetitions. I use an 8 to 12 repetition loading zone for strength building. I use 8 to 12 seconds for power development, and then I progress out from there depending on the energy system demands of the work or sports environment. The reverse crunch is an excellent abdominal exercise, not only because it trains the lower region of the abdominal wall, but because it activates movement patterns that many of us have lost from sitting too much. Everybody moves from the top down. Think about it. When you're sitting on the job, sitting anywhere in your life at home, you're always moving from the top down, which leaches the fluid out of the bottom discs, seldom giving that sacrum and those lower discs a chance to move. So performing the reverse crunch not only strengthens the abdominal musculature from the bottom toward the top, but it actually helps the brain retain some movement patterns that we have lost since our primal days. Now, the positioning on the ball is much the same as for the crunch. You want to make sure you're not getting pressure in the spine or pressure in the neck. Find a good solid anchor. You must anchor yourself very well with this exercise. Do not use barbells in racks. I have seen people try to do this exercise and pick 315 pounds right up off the rack. A 10-pound weight here produces a tremendous flexion or force at the other end because of the length of the lever arm. Now, watch carefully because Terry's going to perform the exercise, and what I want you to notice is that he's not doing a hip flexion exercise. It's an exercise that isolates the abdominal wall. So what he does is he picks the weight up off the ground, flexes his hips, and rolls all the way up till the abdominal muscles are fully shortened. But on the way back, he only goes till his sacrum touches the ball. He does not unlock the hips. And then he comes back up. So go down until the sacrum touches the ball. Hold. Here he's getting a stretch on the abdominal wall, which is essential to give full range of motion strengthening, making it a superior exercise. Now, as you get stronger, what you can do to increase the load without increasing the weight is just move further down the ball, which Terry cannot do because he's fixed in this position. Now, this is quite a hard exercise, so this is another great place you want to use plate mates. A 2 or 3 pound increase on this exercise could just be so much it'll destroy your form. But a small 1 1/4 pound increase, just like that, is just what the doctor ordered. Not really now. Since Terry's a doctor, I can say that. Excellent. Now, an advanced progression on the reverse crunch is to bring your body further over the ball. It's also a good idea to change the position on your anchor points from high to low and low to high, each different workout, because the position of the anchor point, or the point that you grab your anchor, has a difference or an influence on the recruitment pattern in the muscles of your trunk. Now, I'm going to demonstrate how to increase the demand of the exercise by decreasing the base of support. As you saw, Terry was holding on to 2 of the beams. When you go to 1 beam, you have significantly less base of support. So what we'll do is we'll first go to a 2-arm single beam hold, then we'll go to a 1-arm hold, and then we'll go to alternating arms. Here's how it's done. Now, where was Muscle and Fitness with all their guys that thought these exercises on the ball were wimpy when I developed that exercise? The next exercise is the prone bridge, a very challenging exercise. First, you must master the exercise with no weight, and only then should you begin to try the exercise with a weight. As you can see here, I'm going to allow Penny to use a very small weight because it's a very hard exercise, which is another good reason to have some plate mates on hand, because a 1-pound jump with this exercise is a huge jump. So just think if all you had in your gym was 5 and 10-pound dumbbells, you could never really do the exercise. Pay close attention to how the prone bridge exercise is performed. First, you'll see Penny do it with no weight. Notice that she raises her arm in flexion first to keep the center of gravity in the sagittal plane or front to back. If you raise your arm out to the side, it'll certainly pull you right off the ball. That is a very hard exercise, but it will improve your strength and stability in the core, hips, and even in the shoulder girdle, like very few exercises I've ever seen. Give it a try, I'm sure you'll like it. This next exercise is called the shift, because as you move your arms, your center of gravity shifts all over the place, making it very hard to stay on top of the ball. This is an advanced exercise. You'll notice Penny first moves her arms in the front to back or sagittal plane, and then progresses to the more challenging frontal and transverse planes. Watch how she does the exercise. Now, before you pick up a bigger weight with this exercise, I recommend you pick up the speed of movement. To quote Al Vermeil from the Chicago Bulls, train slow, be slow. So have a look at a variety of different movement patterns that you can use at higher speeds. Problem with this exercise is it makes you sweat. Sissel's new SitFit device for the unstable squat. It's an excellent way to introduce somebody to doing unstable squat type activities because it's far safer than trying to learn to squat on a ball, as you can imagine. You don't have far to fall. What you do is you have them stand on the sit fit. To start off with, you can do one of two things. You can put a little bit more air in it, which makes it a little tighter, or a little softer, which means they don't have as far to go. Preferably, I like to start off with it a little bit mushy. Now, because you're in quite a narrow squat stance, don't expect your clients or yourself to squat all the way down and hold a lumbar lordosis. So I only allow my clients to squat as far as they can go, holding a neutral spine, and that's good enough. So, with the Olympic bar on your back, it gives you a little bit more balance, but this is only for people that want to increase their stabilizer strength beyond what you could do just using a body weight squat. So always start just using your body weight. Terry will demonstrate how to do the Sissel sit-fit squat with an Olympic barbell.